ever want to be accused of prejudging a matter.
But now that she's taken her seat on the court, how will she judge? What kind of justice? What kind of court? A new look for the state Supreme Court, an all-new season for Due Process. The Whitman Court, which way will it go? That's what's on the docket for this week's Due Process.
Major funding for Due Process is made possible by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law. Additional funding is provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual.
With the seating this week of Janie LaVecchia, the state Supreme Court got its newest member, the governor, her fifth appointee. What's next for this justice and this court? How do they stack up with what's come before? How will they face up to the challenges ahead? I'm Raymond Brown, and we'll look for some answers from some key legal figures, including one who once sat on the court. But first, Sandy King with a look at Justice LaVecchia, how she got to the court, and what that court looks like.
Raymond, what it's looking more and more like is Christy Whitman. The governor's now named 5 of the 7 members of the court. She'll get a 6th appointment in May with the retirement of Daniel O'Hearn. And in the modern court era, the last 53 years, only one other governor's had the chance to do that. But what about the newest justice? What about this Whitman court? And what about the charge that most of her appointments have come too close to home? A charge that found its way into a scathing Star-Ledger editorial.
Well, actually, it was a fascinating editorial. They admitted that every other governor has appointed people from their inner circle.
And Governor Whitman's done just that. Her naming of Janie LaVecchia means that 3 of her 5 appointments to the court have come straight from her cabinet.
I'm still a bit numb from hearing Governor Whitman ask me the question that I think every lawyer would be thrilled to hear, which is, would you be willing to serve on New Jersey Supreme Court, one of the finest courts in the nation?
It was an appointment for which Whitman felt no need to apologize.
Throughout her career as commissioner of the Department of Banking and Insurance, as a director of Division of Law, as the state's chief administrative law judge, Janie has constantly distinguished herself for her acumen, her honesty, her compassion, and her commitment.
And her praise was echoed just 2 weeks later when LaVecchia won a unanimous vote from the Senate Judiciary Committee.
I think that kind of breadth of experience is truly exceptional and something that really serves a purpose for this particular position.
A position that's one of the state's most powerful on a court where she's found 2 old friends.
I can think of no higher honor for a practicing attorney here in our great state of New Jersey.
Before she took over in banking and insurance, she worked for the Attorney General. First, Deborah Poritz, now the court's Chief Justice, then Peter Vernero, named to the court himself last year.
I hope that you will see fit to approve my nomination today.
Senator Kosko? Yes. Senator Mathewson? Yes. Senator Roberts?
And they did in record time. The full Senate did the same. Even a slighted state bar signed off when LaVecchia appeared voluntarily before the committee that Whitman had passed by.
I do have a couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
It was all in marked contrast to how Vernero's appointment was received just last year, with questions as to qualification and rejection by the bar, which led the governor this time to bypass the Bar Association.
I would hope she'd be able to work out something with the Bar Association so that she does get the benefit of advice and consent.
So does Marie Garibaldi, once a state bar president and the Justice LaVecchia just replaced.
I think it would be better if the governor went through the State Bar Committee, and I think that eventually she probably will.
I can understand why the governor feels that she's able to do that job on her own with the various bits of input that she gets from within the administration.
But keeping it all inside the inner circle is what's raised some controversy, even on Lavecchia.
Well, it brings to bear a certain kind of nepotism that I think is inconsistent with the standards we ought to apply for judicial selection.
There were some similar gripes from some Senate Democrats and from the Star-Ledger, which in an editorial asked, is the Republican Party so bereft of talent that only those in Whitman's cabinet are worthy? And then there are the inevitable comparisons to the courts that came before.
Our first case this morning is A52, Planned Parenthood of Central New Jersey v. Farmer.
Oh, there was a time in history when you couldn't be more proud to be a citizen of the state of New Jersey when it came to the reputation that the New Jersey State Supreme Court enjoyed. I think it's been quite some time since we have performed at that level, and I don't see this court as taking us back to those high-altitude plains.
The courts that people point to, the Hughes Court, we have former Governor Hughes, we have Chief Justice Wilentz was very active in politics and government. I really don't think it's a criticism that holds much weight.
Or as the governor told NJN's On the Record.
But, you know, the thing that's fascinating about that, I am the first governor and modern governor in the last last three administrations to appoint two people from the bench to the Supreme Court. You know, everybody talks about the Wilentz court was the court, it was wonderful. They were all political functionaries. They didn't go from the bench, from a lower bench or a Superior Court bench to the Supreme Court. I'm the one who put Jim Coleman and Ginny on that bench on the Supreme Court, Ginny Long on the Supreme Court. They came from the bench. I'm the first one to do that.
She is also the first to make the court look at least a little more like New Jersey. When Whitman was elected, there was one woman on the bench, the only woman ever on a court that had always been all male and all white. Now, thanks to this governor, there is one black member of the court as well, Raymond, as three women.
Still, Sandy, this court has not pleased all observers. In fact, she's received some mixed reviews, as we'll learn from a very distinguished panel, including a former justice of the court. So stay with us.
What does the New Jersey Supreme Court do?
I'm not sure.
Supreme Court? What do they do?
Oh, the state Supreme Court, it's the highest level of courts in New Jersey.
They rule on cases that come from the Court of Appeals.
The Supreme Court? The New Jersey Supreme Court administers...
I guess they would just govern the local courts.
People have appeals. They want to go to the Supreme Court.
And when it can't be solved anywhere else, that's where it ends up.
Make judgments and rulings.
Tax cases, law cases.
The decision is made there. If they want to appeal that decision, then it goes into the federal division.
So our citizens on the street may not know much about the top court or how important that court is to the state. But in some New Jersey circles, Supreme Court watching is a favorite sport. And among those who watch most closely and well, former Supreme Court Justice Robert Clifford, Alan Lowenstein, founder of one of the state's most influential law firms, and from Newark, Andrew Berry, chairman of New Jersey's oldest and largest law firm. Welcome to all of you. Justice Clifford, let me start with maybe one of the assumptions that underlies this whole debate, that a governor, by appointing 5 or 6 people to the court, you were one of the 6 appointees of Justice Cahill, can shape the way the court thinks or shape the flavor of the court. Is that a valid assumption or not?
Sure. I think it is. Governors would be expected to appoint people in whose judgment the governor has faith, in whose abilities the governor has faith. They get fooled a lot. But I would expect governors to appoint what a governor would think of as right-thinking people. And in doing so, the governor probably has some idea in which he or she would wish the state to go.
Let me ask you the question a tough way. If you were to become governor in the next term, do you think if you had 4 or 5 appointments, given your experience on the court, that you'd be able to pick justices who would lead the court in a certain direction in terms of legal or judicial philosophy?
You could. I'm not so sure that I would give that a high priority, but sure you could.
But in fact, isn't that what's happening now? That just Governor Whitman, I started to call it justice, Governor Whitman is in the process of picking a court that she thinks will lead it in a certain way in terms of her philosophy, in terms of her overall view of how a court should function?
Yeah, it may very well be, and every governor has done the same thing.
Okay. Alan, how do you feel about the way in which this governor has selected appointees for this court?
Well, I think she's appointed people of integrity and dedication to public service, but I don't think she's appointed, with one or two exceptions, individuals of broad experience before they got on the court.
What are the
They're going to have
implications?
to learn on the job.
What are the implications of that?
Well, the implications is that we don't know what the court is going to be like. The court's going to have to establish its own reputation based on the experience it develops, because several of the members of the court really have had no extensive private practice or judicial experience, with the exception, of course, of Justices Coleman and Lloyd.
Well, let me remove Justice Clifford from the hypothetical governorship, and let's have you elected. How would the way in which you make appointments differ from what we've seen with Governor Whitman?
I would rely to a great extent on the Judiciary Committee of the State Bar Association to come up with people who had some prominence and proven ability at the bar and at the court. Sometimes you get fooled by that, but experience is a great teacher, and we've been very fortunate in the 50 years of our New Jersey Supreme Court history that have had some outstanding lawyers and judges who came to the bench with the benefit of their prior experience. Now we're going into a court that's going to have to prove itself on the job, but that's been done before.
Drew Barry, what's your feeling about the importance or unimportance of the bar being involved directly in the process of vetting, evaluating, and making recommendations on potential appointees to the court?
Ray, I have to say that I was somewhat disappointed, as I think a lot of practicing lawyers were, about the governor's position. It's a rational position. She's perfectly happy to continue to have bar involvement in choosing other judges. But at the Supreme Court, she says it's mine to choose, and if the Senate doesn't like it, the Senate won't confirm.
Let me play the devil's advocate on that point. I suspect that some non-lawyers might say, look, the bar is a big club of lawyers, and they want to have input into which of their members gets on the court. That's one way to look at it. I suppose there's another view that would lead you and Alan Lowenstein to say the bar should have a more significant role than it had with this last appointment. What's the reason?
I don't think that I would argue real hard so long as we had enough information about the nominee. In the last couple of nominations, you had Justice Long, who had served long and well in the AAA Farm Club for the New Jersey Supreme Court, the appellate division. In Peter Venera, you had somebody who had, although at tender years from my perspective, considerable public experience. He ran, in effect, a law firm 3 times as big as ours.
Let me ask this question of all of you. I went to law school, graduated in 1974, but I went to law school in California. In California, my professors, who were all from California, regarded this court as perhaps the most prestigious court in the country. You heard Professor Slocum, who was interviewed last week, say that prestige no longer attaches to this court. Do you share that view, that there has been a decline in the status of our court from the years under Justice Hughes and perhaps Justice Wilentz to the current court? Anybody share that view?
I think we have an unknown quantity at the present time. During the period of Chief Justice Vanderbilt, Weintraub, Hughes, Wilentz,
you've gone from 49 to the current time.
Those were courts of outstanding reputation, just as you said, nationally. The present court is going to have to prove itself. It may very well turn out to be an excellent court, but it's going to learn on the job.
Drew Barry, what's your assessment of the status of this court as compared to its predecessors?
Ray, I think we need to be real careful not to conflate the flossiness of a resume with the workmanship of a state Supreme Court. I think that there is a subtext of the criticism of the governor's appointees, and the subtext is, gee whiz, their resumes aren't quite so flossy as those justices they replace. I'm entirely content to have cases of my clients decided by people who are graduated from Rutgers Law School instead of Harvard Law School. I think that there is an unfortunate undercurrent of resume snobbery I think you're going to see a court here that is not very different in its work product than the previous courts.
Justice Clifford, the remove of this whole debate from the political process is interesting. Now, we showed a few moments ago a few citizens, and we weren't trying to make them look like they didn't know or care about the court, but it's fairly apparent that a governor has a broad range of discretion in judicial appointments in terms of being able to move without paying a political price, except perhaps cases like Justice Venero, who was surrounded by an immediate controversy. And yet there are others who are passionately concerned about it, but it's a fairly small group. Does that mean essentially that a governor can do pretty much what he or she wants within certain limits in terms of the court, and the political process is removed from that?
I think it does. I think it does mean that. Incidentally, I want to congratulate your professors at California and their assessment of the New Jersey Supreme Court. Whether this court is going to live up to that distinguished reputation is, I think, as Alan has pointed out, remains to be seen. They're going to have the tough cases are going to determine that.
Why was it that up through the time, certainly that I went through law school, and maybe another 10 or 12 years, and maybe even more, this court was held in such high esteem around the country? What was the basis of that?
You have to leave that to history, at least as far as this member of the court is concerned.
But certainly this was a court that wrestled with tough issues involving education and housing that were issues that resonated around the country.
Enormous issues. And right, people in Texas followed. People in South Carolina, the political people that were concerned, say, with public education, were on top of these cases.
Well, this court is going to take on issues of comparable magnitude.
Sure is.
Am I getting the sense from talking to you, at least, that it's virtually, and perhaps from Mr. Berry's assessment of the Flossie resume, that it's impossible to know whether the people going on a court are the kind of people who are going to be able to wrestle successfully with these tough issues?
No, the governor knows that the people he or she appoints are going to be able to wrestle with tough issues. Whether they're going to reach the same resolution of those tough issues as a governor would reach, that is dicey stuff. You can't tell.
But a subtext...
Because you can make a pretty good guess.
Okay. All right, well then what's your guess based on the people on the court now? Do you have a sense of whether this is a court that will prove in the long run, the long view of history, to be as strong as the ones that came before?
I see no reason why it should not be so.
Al?
It will take some time before they develop the experience of the judges who have served in the past on the Supreme Court.
What about this inter-cabinet criticism? I mean, clearly in a state as diverse as New Jersey's, with people from a wide variety of background, the criticism is that the governor has chosen from a small circle of people with whom she's personally familiar, and that's a narrowing of the kinds of minds and representativeness that should be on the court. Is that a fair criticism or not?
I think so. I think she has chosen from a small group of people who are close intimates of herself, and has not turned to the broader scope that's available at the practicing bar and on the courts itself. We have some excellent Superior Court judges who could have been advanced to just as Justice Long was. And she's an outstanding appointment, I think, because of her prior experience on the bench. But we're still have to see what's going to develop, and I think it's going to take a matter of time.
Drew Berry, do I take it that you don't agree with the inner circle criticism, the suggestion that this governor's been too small in the scope of her search for appointees to this court?
I don't know. Let's look at gender and let's look at race, and that certainly looks less like a narrowing of the pool than the pools that had been chosen from before. And I don't suggest that there are either gender or racial litmus tests, but I think the fact that the New Jersey Supreme Court now looks more like New Jersey is a good thing, and I think you see it and are beginning to see it in its jurisprudence. I think the former courts were sensitive on issues of race. I think this one is going to be even more so.
Well, let me ask you then to take your crystal ball out. If we've talked about personalities, we now want to focus a little on issues. We know that Mount Laurel and Abbott versus Burke issues involving education and housing have been among those that this court has used to gain its reputation. What would you see as the likely issues that are critical ones that will face this court over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I mean, right out of the box, Dale versus Boy Scouts of America is an opinion that would have come from the center of the Wilentz Court. You had a number.
All right, we need to explain for a second. Dale involves the case of a scoutmaster who was homosexual and the question of whether he could be excluded from participation.
Right, okay. Openly gay scoutmaster, and the Boy Scouts asserted in New Jersey, as they had elsewhere successfully, that they had certain First Amendment associational rights and they could choose not to have someone as a Boy Scout leader who was gay. Now, Chief Justice Ports took that opinion on herself, and she used the New Jersey law against discrimination, which the legislature had passed, and said it trumps the First Amendment claims of the Boy Scouts, and so Mr. Dale has a right to serve. That case, of course, is up in the United States Supreme Court, awaiting an uncertain fate. But the characteristic of the New Jersey Supreme Court not caring too much about what other states have done, not caring too much about the center of public opinion, perhaps, went and did what it saw as the right thing. And I think that's a very Wilentz-like opinion. I think the court is going to be very liberal on social issues, very liberal, maybe even more liberal than the Wilentz court on employment rights issues. And I'm not passing a judgment on any of this. I'm just making a comparison.
Let me ask you, Justice Clifford, whether you would agree that those are the areas where this court is likely to make a mark if it does.
Yeah, with the information that I have at hand now, I think yes. You know, let me come back to the suggestion though that this governor is guilty of appointment of that there's something cronyism at work.
That's clearly what the charge is.
She didn't know Justice Coleman from a hole in a wall. Had no idea. I bet she had never met the man until the appointment time came to pressure. I bet she didn't know Virginia Long. Knew she was her people told her she was a distinguished judge. But her appointments of close associates is no different from what Governor Byrne did, Governor Cahill did. Byrne appointed his own counsel in the form of Justice O'Hearn, in the form of Justice Pollock, in the form of Justice Handler. He appointed Sidney Schreiber, I suspect, on the basis of sheer talent, but he wasn't close to him at all. Governor Cahill appointed Justice Mountain, whom he didn't know, Justice Sullivan, whom he didn't know, Justice Pashman, whom he didn't know, Chief Justice Garvin, whom he knew well, and I was the first appointee from the street, as we say.
So you think this is a mixture that is typical of what's happened in the past and it doesn't trouble you?
Sure it does.
Let me go back to the crystal ball for a second. Would you expect that school finance, which has been so much at the heart of what this court has wrestled with in the past, will continue to be in front of this court and an issue with which it will wrestle?
Yeah.
And do you...
Yes, they're not going to run away from that. I mean, I know people are hoping that the court is just fed up with it, up to here with that issue. They're not going to let it go.
Do you have a sense of whether they will find a way to be more ingenious at having the rulings they make affect policy?
I have no sense of that.
Okay. Do you agree, Alan, that school finance is going to continue to be a central issue and a critical issue for the court?
I certainly do. School construction, school financing, there are many issues that are going to be coming up once the economy goes downhill, at least for a brief period. I think Governor Whitman has been very fortunate to have an excellent economy, and that's changed the issues that have come before the court.
Now, Drew, I'm not going to force you into the realm of economic projection. We'll let Alan do that. But in terms of school financing, do you think it's an issue that will remain pretty much in the middle of the court's table? I think there are a lot of people who would be surprised to hear Justice Clifford say they're going to have to wrestle with it more, because I think there's a sense on some people's part that the court's finished with it.
And I think that's not an incorrect sense. I think the court desperately wants to get out of the business of telling the state how to run the schools. I think the court probably has begun to retreat from a kind of one-to-one equating dollars with quality delivered. I think you're going to see a bump of continued interest because, as Alan said, there are billions and billions of school construction dollars.
And an interest in preschool, which has not been an exclusive focus, but which is where the policymakers are concerned.
I agree with that.
In all, as we look at the Supreme Court of the state of New Jersey, if you were to look back from the vantage point of maybe 30 years down the road, which is really a long time in jurisprudence, what do you think is likely to be said about this court? And I know that's a tough one, but that's why we asked you.
You know, I can't tell you that in the year 2000, January 2000. As Alan Lowenstein suggested, we have to wait and see. These people are, talk to me when I've got a reputation kind of thing. Come back in 5 years, let me see what has happened. These people are all, many of them, the majority of the courts, all brand new, and we can engage in just so much guesswork.
So it sounds like we're in an embryonic phase, and we have to wait and see before we can make a final
I think that's
decision.
so with this court.
So will you all come back in about, what, 5 years? 5 years, that's about a time when we can come back.
And Raymond, I'll be thrilled to be around to come back in 5 years.
We know you're going to be here. And you'll be 90 years old, then we'll really have to call you an old wise man, and you'll have to tell us with great accuracy where we're going. I want to thank you all for being with us and tell you that that's it for this first edition of our 5th Due Process season. But you'll want to join us again next week when we take on the controversial question of what to do about drugs. Change the laws, even throw them out. Well, former Attorney General Bob Del Tufo and former Governor Brendan Byrne go head-to-head on our next Due Process program. Till then, for Sandy King and all of us here at Due Process, I'm Raymond Brown.
Yes, there are cases when the court will be called upon to fill in gaps in legislation as reasonably and as sensibly as they can within the parameters of the written word from the legislature. Sure, there will be ambiguity that needs to be resolved by the highest court, and I think that's an appropriate role for the court to play. But I am also respectful, as my comments mentioned before, that the legislature and the governor collectively are the entities that make law in this state, and the judiciary needs to be deferential to the expressed views of those bodies.
Major funding for Due Process was made possible by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, committed to educating the public about the law. Additional funding was provided by Lawyer's Diary and Manual,